In stats, we started transforming and combining random variables. We have a couple of rules at the top. Now, this is based on x being part of a function. So if we have some kind of function where we can find y by plugging in x, then we have a few rules. If you add or subtract something, it definitely affects the center, but it has no effect on standard deviation. So maybe write it off to the side. Adding or subtracting has no effect on standard deviation. Now be careful with this. This is only when we're plugging x into a function. So it doesn't, adding or subtracting some constant a, as you see typed there, has no effect. Multiplying definitely does. It affects both the mean and the standard deviation. No effect on the shape, but there you go. All right, we have this Jeep Tour problem. And this is just review off the last video, the last lesson. So we're using these two formulas to find what it's asking for. Now this problem builds, so it's going to take off from here, and it starts out as review. So I would hit pause and see if you can find those two values. Oh, by the way, this is also mu. All right. All right, let's dive in. This guy, Pete, is doing Jeep tours, and he's going to have at least 2 passengers on a trip, and looks like up to 6. Over the years, this is the proportion of trips that fall into each of those categories. So 25% of the time, he has 3 passengers. To find the expected value, we're going to go 2 times 0.15 plus 3 times 0.25 plus ... Let's show the last term. 6 times 0.05. When you do all of that, you end up with 3.75. On average, for all of his trips, on average, Pete has 3.75 passengers. For standard deviation, I find variance first, and you take each x minus the mean that we just found, square it, then times that x's probability. Here, let's do another one. 3 minus 3.75 times 3's probability. And let's skip to the last term. I strongly recommend you practice this on the calculator. When you add up all those terms, you get the variance. That's sigma squared. You end up with 118.75. When you square root it, you get the standard deviation. All right. You, of course, have to show work on these. Please don't just type and write the answer. All right, moving on. This problem builds because Pete is going to factor in how much money he charges customers. So he is charging them $150 each, which means we have a function on the amount that he charges or collects, as it says in that paragraph, C equals 150x. If we were to alter the probability distribution based on how much he charges, it would look like this. So he's still having 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 customers. But now we know how much money he's bringing in. So if he's charging $150 a customer, he is bringing in $300 for 2, 450, 600, 750, and 900. We're just going x times 150. Probabilities are the same. Those have not changed. So to find the mean, we could go 300 times 0.15 plus 450 times 0.25. So you could do that, but there's a trick. There's a shortcut. It's typed later in this handout, but if you want to find the mean of a function, all you have to do is plug in the mean of the variable, if you have the mean of that variable. So in this case, we're going to find the mean of C by going 150 times what we found a second ago, 375. When we do that, we get an amount. So we type that in and we get 562.50. Standard deviation is also very simple. Technically, you're supposed to find the absolute value of that coefficient times the standard deviation of x. Because standard deviation must be positive because it's like how far apart they are. So that's why it's absolute value. So when we do absolute value of C, it's 150 times 1.0897. And we're talking about money, so we'll go to the hundredths place. That is 163.46. That doesn't look like a money symbol, does it? Let's fix that. Should be a money symbol. Oh, and here's this one. All right. They ask more about Pete's Jeep Tour business. Let's take a look. What if he is out of pocket $100 per trip? So it talks about it right up here. We need a new function. So that new function would be 150x, that's how much he collects, minus the $100 he's out of pocket per trip. So when we do our probability distribution, we have all these values to take into account. So if it clearly asks for the probability distribution, then yes, you have to do it. If it doesn't, you can do the shortcut I showed you earlier. So we know this was 300, 450, 600, 750, and 900. So for V, the profit, we just need to take 100 away. And that's how much he's profiting. The really good news is that if you forget the formula that I wrote down a second ago, you can always find mean and standard deviation by hand. You don't have to continue, you don't have to have those formulas memorized. But that's the probability distribution for V. But to get the mean of V, you can go with what I said earlier. Here, I'm going to rewrite it in case you missed it. If X is based on a function, let's call it Y, then find the mean of Y and standard deviation by plugging in mean times standard deviation of x. So the mean of v is 150 mean of x minus 100. We already know what 150 mu x is. Let's just subtract 100. And we get 462.50. Standard deviation, there's a catch. Remember, we talked about it at the very beginning of this document. The minus 100 has no effect on standard deviation. So that means the standard deviation of V is identical to the standard deviation of C. Whoops, why did I write mu? That should be sigma, sorry. All right, that's as far as we got on Monday. Have a great day. See you later.